Shalom, my friends, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And you know, there's nothing I love more than the Jewish holidays. But we have something almost as wonderful with us in the neighborhood today. It's a non-Jewish holiday. You knew I was going to, yeah, she knew I was going to go. Anywho, this lovely lady here is an authoress and an actress. You have seen her on stage going back years ago in the original Chicago Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a major, major event in downtown theater history. Plus, you see her in her theater company, Theater of the Apes, with her wonderful husband, Greg Kotis, who was on this program a few years ago. And together they do interesting, different downtown-y, satirical, dark, I hate the government kind of shows, which I don't blame them for. And what else? She has a book now. She's got a new book in which she collaborated with an illustrator. So many people do this, but her illustrator is all of 9 years old, and she draws better than I ever will. Ladies and gentlemen, won't you please welcome to the neighborhood, AYUN Hallidday.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hello.
Did I get that right? Is AYUN?
Yeah, and my last name's Halliday.
Halliday again.
Last name.
Yeah. So, Mike, I guess that is the first question, because you asked me before we went on the air if I could pronounce your first name. And as I figured maybe it rhymes with man, it rhymes with can, or Moshe Dayan, which is really the close. But where is your name from? AYUN. Where'd you get that?
The simplest answer is it's Welsh.
Oh, okay. Are you how many sides are you Walish?
None. Scotch-Irish, pretty much. But I mean, different people get different stories, so I'll leave it with it's Welsh.
Well, so you're Irish, and how much scotch do you drink? Because we know those people. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So let's talk first of all about the book, because this is what you're here to really talk about. It's called Panther City. Nothing to do with, zoos or anything, but show. I mean, I mentioned zoos. Show the book.
Oh, there's the book.
Panther City.
Get it in focus. Woo!
There it is. Now, tell us what, for the impetus, if you don't mind my using that word, the impetus for the book, how it came about and how you developed it, not just as text. By the way, it's not an animated book. It's not a what you call graphic novel thing. It's story with some pictures in it. But where did it come from?
Well, I was going up to the Catskills upstate to take a writing workshop with my friend Ariel Gore. And my main impetus was I wanted to steal all her moves so that I could go teach writing workshops, preferably in Mexico. So I didn't have a lot invested in it as a student. I didn't have something I wanted to work on. And I was pleasantly surprised by how much I loved being a student and how much I really got from it. And there were some women who'd arrived with a idea that they wanted to further kick that can down the road or start it. And I really didn't have anything. So it was sort of generative writing workshop for me. And I fooled around with different things based on the assignment. I think we were looking at utopias versus dystopias. And then I started remembering that a friend of mine who's a preschool teacher had been talking about how her class had been bringing in like Quaker Oats boxes and cereal boxes and things, and they were going to make a city out of that. And I said, my third grade class did that too, but it wasn't cereal boxes. It was more flat, like more collage, and we would pin it to the bulletin board. And I loved art, so I was super into this project, and it sounds like a great project that would be so fun and so creative. But we immediately started to fight in my memory. I mean, get somebody from my third grade class, they might tell a different story. But we were, we ganged up on one person because we presumed he was lying to us, we would rip down each other's stuff. So then I just started putting my thumb on the scale, and I love to write in a child's voice, particularly around 8 or 9 years old, because I think they care about things so deeply. They really see and call out injustice, particularly when it pertains to themselves. And the language is like so passionate. It's just really fun to write as an indignant child who does not quite have all the information, but thinks she does. So that I left that workshop going, oh, I think I want to
Now I
bring
am
this
kind of
forward.
curious. What do you do besides you suddenly had an idea for a book to write? What did you glean? What was good about the writing workshop? What did this woman do? Gore,
Ariel Gore. She
Ariel
was a
Gore.
wonderful writer, and I'll plug her latest book. It's called Rehearsals for Dying, which is
Sounds like fun. Yeah.
yeah, it's a cancer memoir, but I really recommend it. And she is funny, and she did just go through, a terrible experience that most of us do go through at some point. So anyway, plug in Ariel stuff. But what I really liked is she's very quiet. She's a very quiet person. And when I met her, she didn't like to engage with strangers too much. Being a beloved writing teacher, I think, has changed that a little or forced her to be a little bit more of a people person. But in the writing workshop, she would really, channel that quiet self. And she'd just sit there while we all worked on our notebooks for about 10 minutes. And then she'd say, well, whatever you've written, what's underneath that? Look and see what's underneath that. And we'd go for another 10 minutes. And then she might say something like, okay, now I want you to flip the camera angle and write it from the other person's point of view if there's another person. And, it just was like that. And it was so fun. And it was so easy. You didn't have much time to get in your head. And, if it was like, oh, but I want to keep writing the kid. Well, you could either keep writing the kid or you could say, I'll come back to the kid. And
Yeah.
it was great. It was so fun. It was to not think about like, where's this going? Or like, is anybody going to buy this? Who cares? It was so great.
Now, actually, the one thing that threw me a little bit is you want to teach writing workshops. Everybody, if you don't have a podcast, you're going to have a writing workshop somewhere. But why Mexico? Where did that come from?
Oh, I love it. I love it. We've been spending a lot of time in Mexico City because there is a company, TotalTheater, that has started translating and producing a lot of my husband's musicals and having good luck with them. So I started tagging along and I'm just like, wow, I really like this. I also, I have a volunteer gig that a lot of the clients at the volunteer gig are Spanish speakers. So a couple of years ago, after yet another trip to Mexico City, I was like, I really could, try a little harder to speak Spanish with people. And now I can speak kind of child cave person Spanish with.
Muy bien!
Yeah.
Oh, bravo!
Señor Rabbi, gracias
Oh.
mucho.
Oh, you got the accent. I can't even do that. I trip my tongue on mierda. I can't really do it too well. But so okay, I get it. Now, by the way, tell your husband Greg Kotis, you met him doing one of the greatest shows ever in the history of the universe. It was called Too Much. When did you join? Was it 1980?
I joined actually on the first anniversary. So I think I was the first batch of new cast members I think my first show was like 1988 in December. And then a couple of years later, Greg auditioned for us and everybody else knew him and they saw his name on the list and they were like, oh, Greg Kotis, he's great. We should just put him in. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't know this guy. Like he has to audition like everybody else. And I get a vote as to whether he should be in the company. And then he auditioned. I was like, oh yes, I think we should cast him. And a couple months later, we started dating and tomorrow's our 30th wedding anniversary.
Oh, mit Mazel McLick. This is so. Do you have any special plans? What are you
we do. We're going to go. This is very uncharacteristic for us, but we're going to take the train to Milford, New Jersey, and go for a 6-mile hike. And then we're going to go to a bookstore that it was like, oh, I did a reading there. And they're like, when your new book comes out, yeah, we'll take some Panther cities to an event.
All right.
So I'm going to drop off some Panther cities.
Everything about that sounded so romantic except the two words new and Jersey. But okay, this is but here's the deal. If people don't know, I'm kind of assuming that people know what Too Much Light is and was, certainly back in Chicago and New York. It was 30 plays in 60 minutes. So every play was somewhere between 15 seconds and maybe 2.5 minutes total. How to get them all done, or if you stop, sometimes there'd be 1 or 2 left over if you didn't get that time. And it was just like boom, 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 almost no props, no cut, nothing. You just went out there and did it. So how the hell did you audition for? What did you do?
Oh, we just had people come in and with the understanding that if you're cast, you'll be playing yourself or a version of yourself, and everybody has to write and everybody has to perform. So, you've got a 2-minute audition slot. You can do whatever you want.
What
And
did you do?
what did I do? Oh,
Yeah.
I totally pivoted at the last minute. I sweated it out and overthought it, and I was gonna I had written a play where I was a tap dancing fetus addressing George Bush on it. Like really the morning of the audition, I was like, this is awful. Like I'm not going to do this. I'm creating something that I think they want rather than just like creating something that I am. So I'd written a poem about my grandmother who had recently passed and, was this woman from Hopewell, Indiana, a large family, Hopewell, Indiana. And I just wrote a little poem about her and appreciating her and what she'd done for me and how different we were. And I went in and it was a rainy, rainy night. I was the last person to audition. And I remember standing in the little teeny tiny lobby of Stage Left Theater waiting for my turn. And the neo-futurists were taking turns being the audition monitor, and everybody else was in watching the auditions. And I was out there with Karen Christopher, who became one of my very best friends, another person who's very different from me, very direct, very focused. And we're looking out at the rain. And she's like, so what are you doing for your audition? And I told her, like, I did this, I had this thing, but I'm going to do something else. And she's like, oh, why don't you do the thing you prepared? And I was like, nope, it's bad. And she's like, oh, I think you should do the thing you prepared. And usually I will fold like a house of cards. If somebody says, I think you should do this other thing, I'll be like, okay, well, I want to please you. So, okay. But I went in and I stuck to my guns. And I think there's no way I would have been cast if I was the tap dancing fetus.
Did you ever get to do the tap dancing fetus? Did you
No,
ever
thank
sneak that in?
goodness.
No, never did.
That
Oh.
boneyard of history, that one.
So what is your favorite or the most proud tiny little playlet? I mean, what do you call them a play? Little mini one-act play that you did over the years in TMLTB.
Oh, TML, TMLM, that's a great question. And I definitely wrote hundreds and hundreds of them. But one that I remember that we did a lot was called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And it was 5 of us on stage. And I'm trying to remember I think it was Louise Hay, who was popular at the time. And I had a friend who was super into her. That was just about kind of affirmations that you would say, I believe in the abundance of the universe. I believe this, I believe that. This is true. And I just started it and I was listening with my little headphones to my Walkman, my cassette Walkman, and repeating the affirmation. And then somebody would come out and join me and they also put in their headphones. And it just got bigger and bigger. So like, about how the universe is conspiring against you and like you will smite your enemies and my parents deserve to die. In the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete.
Was that in the anthology? Because they put out an anthology of the plays that you guys did. Many in book form. It's pretty great. So now we say, okay, you're there. You're in Chicago. You meet the love of your life, with thank God you're still with. And then why did you go? Why didn't you guys stay in Chicago?
That was Greg. I think he felt that, he had taken it as far as he could take it in Chicago. He has much more ambition than I do, I think. And had an idea that he might like to write for television. And I think now it is possible to live in Chicago and write for television. But at the time it was, you either go to LA or New York. I had always wanted to live in New York since I was a child. My grandparents had a subscription to the New Yorker magazine, which I loved, even though I didn't understand. I would look at those cartoons. And they also had a book that they'd bought at a garage sale about like bohemians and beatniks in Greenwich Village. And I was like, that's for me. That sounds great. Kind of unclear that this book had been written in the early 60s before I was born. So I was like, I'm in, let's go. And that's I think partly why we decided to get married, because we didn't have any context for knowing each other outside of the show. And then we were like, at the last minute, we got cold feet and we were like, we better bring the show with us too. We better start doing a version of the show in New York, because that's what's bonding us together. Let's keep doing it. Let's bring the glue.
You're still in New York, so there's no regrets. You live in the village still.
I love it. No, we live in East Harlem. We live in Greg's grandmother's apartment in East Harlem. We've lived here for about 10 years.
So which is better, East Harlem or East Village, or they're two different two?
Well, I think every neighborhood evolves. And the last time I was in the East Village, just a couple of nights ago, actually just last night, I went and saw a show at Under St. Mark's, which I was like, Under St. Mark's, now this feels like the East Village that I know, but a lot of it feels really fancy with glass, very expensive skyscraper
Oh, so it's
condos.
gentrified to the point of where it's not even
It's
the
not as
real.
much fun for me
Yeah.
anymore there. Yeah. But I mean, now it belongs to the young people who live there now and the old people who stayed.
Right.
So
They can't even do the musical Rent there anymore. They have to call it Own. So
yeah,
I
I
just
don't
thought
know
of
that
that.
they could really do the musical Rent even when I was living there. Although I remember them shooting the trailer for the movie in the street and being so irritated that I had to wait for them to finish their shot.
Well, let me ask you, because there's still, we'll stay on theater and then we'll get to your zine and Inky and back to Panther. But you're still in this Theater of the Apes Theater Company. The credo kind of sounds like the credo that Kotis has when he was doing You're in Town. It's this, well, you tell. I mean, what kind of theater are you guys doing?
We do offbeat comedic theater that is not necessarily commercially viable. I think we always have a
Well, You're
hope
in Town
that
was not commercially viable. I mean, there's
no,
no reason that You're in Town make it from the New York City Fringe Festival all the way to Broadway with Tony Awards to boot and everything. And now it's playing in every college in
right.
America. So no commercial potential, as Frank Zappa used to put it. You never quite necessarily know.
Yeah, that's right. And you might as well do something that like you physically have the ability to do that thing. Like it's within your grasp, it's within your scope, and it's something that you believe in and that you have fun. I mean, it's really hard to do it without a lot of support. I think it's probably also hard to do it with a lot of support. We at least have creative control, which feels good.
But
And
you guys did a show just a couple of months ago
yeah,
called the End of All Flesh, and the reviews were of the level that somebody's got to be talking to you guys to move it off Broadway or no, no.
yeah, your lips to God's ears. I'd love that. I know Greg would too. Yeah, we just recorded a soundtrack album, and there were four cast members, and the younger two cast members sing like, beautiful songbirds, and Greg and I kind of croak along, and we had a great three-piece bluegrass band playing with us. So hopeful that maybe people will hear that album on a streaming platform and go, "Whoa, what is this? I want to do it." And hopefully they'll want to do it with us because I don't think
Oh,
I'm ready to give up my part yet. It was really good.
so then what is Wayfaring Strangers? This is a recurring show that you guys do like once a month.
Wayfaring Strangers is an improvised bluegrass musical. So yeah, once a month at the People's Improv Theater on 29th Street in New York, we improvise a bluegrass musical. Our next one is November 16th. And it's improv. So, sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's like, that's pretty good. But I think for a lot of people too, they're not particularly familiar with these old bluegrass tunes. So that can be fun for them to hear that
But
and see
improv,
what we
I
can.
mean, how do you, to do a long form improv as opposed to like a 5 minute sketch I mean, how do you keep the plot involved and then and do song lyrics off that are supposed to rhyme, etc. And so how do you guys do it?
Well, we took classes in musical improv at the Magnet Theater recently. I mean, I thought you're going to show up, you're going to try your best to rhyme, you're going to be funny and uninhibited, and you have some improv experience. It should be cool. So much more than that, like different song structures. And then, they have different, like you can do a fairy tale, you can do a monoscene, you can do this. We sort of ended up making our own form, but using a lot of what we learned there. And some of the other Wayfaring Strangers also took those classes, and that's how we met them. And then there's others who we just know from different parts of life, and then we've been trying to share what we know, what we learned in those classes, and encourage them to take some classes. But they're learning their own hybrid form through us.
Wow. All right. Not leaving theater just yet
Okay.
because I saw a name of a show that you wrote at some point. Um, I'll lead in this way. Have you seen Waiting for Godot on Broadway?
I haven't. I am not a huge fan of that director.
Oh,
Um,
okay. And also it
yeah,
stars Keanu Reeves and the other guy
I
from
am a huge
Bill and
fan
Ted.
of Keanu Reeves. I love him, but I guess I'll go see his new movie that he's got out. And I've seen a lot of productions of Waiting for Godot. So
Well, this is why I'm asking you because you did write a play called Zamboni Godot.
I did write a play called Zamboni Godot that I did with two of
I
my
love
other
Zambonis.
girlfriends.
What the hell is what are they on ice? Which would be
They were in the first scene. Yeah, they were. Everybody in the first scene wore ice skates. And we had to negotiate with the little brick theater in Williamsburg of like, we love this idea, but please don't tear up the stage. Please,
how could
please.
they
Like, we
whoa.
don't.
So did you make fake ice skates that were rubber so
They wore skate guards on their blades. Yeah, but they just
oh,
clumped around. And it was also that they were waiting to go out on the ice. They were in that area where you put on your
oh that
skates
thing
and
with it, yeah.
stand over the barricade. I think it was just I'd been thinking about Waiting for Godot, and I definitely do like to do deep dives on classic plays that I like, and read all the different writings about it and read different reviews. I mean, Waiting for Godot, it's so rich. There's so much. There are New Yorker cartoons about Waiting for Godot. There's an amazing article about Susan Sontag going and doing a production in war-torn Sarajevo while the bombs were still dropping and these actors coming. And that was one of the few instances where the Beckett estate said, okay, we can, women
So
can
is the
play the
Beckett
parts.
estate still being very prickly? Because when he was alive, you had to do his play exactly as he wrote, every stage direction down to the letter. Are they a little more now that he's or you still have to have two people in a
Well,
garbage can
believe me,
cranking?
I would
Yeah.
not presume to speak for the Beckett
Oh,
estate. My impression was that they were still or are still so doctrinaire about, and that Beckett himself, I mean, like, listen, it's his play. He gets to try to make his play whatever he wants, and he was famous, so he could make the rules stick a little harder than the small potatoes can. But that he somewhat brattily, in my opinion, was saying that women can't play these now iconic, famous characters that everybody wants to take a stab at because women don't have prostates. I'm like,
ah, wait,
well, we
women,
can pretend that we do.
you don't?
I'll send you a pamphlet.
Right, the Rebbe
Um,
told us all wrong. I assumed it's like, oh,
but at the same time, at the same time that we were about to go into rehearsal, there was another man doing an off Broadway play called The Underpants Godot, and it was about a gay playwright writing his own version of Godot. I get actually maybe he wasn't the playwright, it was the director, and it was populated with hot young men, including one who was totally nude and a in the play, not in
that
real
is not a
life.
play. That's an excuse to,
That's making theater you want to make, you want to
yeah,
see.
yeah.
But they had a character who showed up who was a woman who represented the Beckett estate, showed up at their dress rehearsal, and they had to perform for her. And I was like, I think this is great. And it definitely made me go even further of like, yeah, how come we don't get to do that?
But
Uh,
Zamboni Godot was not just Waiting for Godot. I mean, it's a whole new play. It's a different play.
right. It was the idea of
Yeah.
two characters who are forever together, can't leave each other, often seem that they don't like each other that much. One who's kind of an optimist and kind of a ding dong, and the other who's pessimist and hard, and that they are just tied together forever.
So
And
it's
just
like
like what's a bunch of
Donald Trump and
scenes.
Elon Musk, essentially. Is
Don't even say it.
just teasing, just teasing here.
Ooh,
Now,
Halloween's over.
now let's get back to print and writing and stuff like that. Well, we were talking
Okay.
about writing, playwriting, but now let's move to you still put out a hard copy magazine, and you
Yeah.
have been for over 35 years, I do believe it is.
No,
No,
27. 27. I always get
27.
I have a 28-year-old daughter, and she was one when the first issue came out.
Oh man, was it named after? It was called the East Village Inky. Was
Yeah.
her that was her nickname or something? Or
Yeah. Her given name is India, and we used to call her Inky when she was little. So that's why it came about because it was a little hard to do off Broadway theater when you really are living very close to the bone on the budget. And I had an idea like, we'll keep doing Too Much Light. The baby will sleep in a basket in the backstage area or in the office. Well, for an hour, that'll be
yeah,
fine. It's late
yeah,
at night. She's not going to be up.
yeah.
I learned a little bit more about how parenthood works. So I really like, we went to Scotland. We tried to do this kind of wild theater making workshop, performance making workshop that my friend Karen Christopher from the Neo Futures was teaching. She was getting married at the same time. So we were going out for the wedding, but I was like, we'll take this workshop and then we'll take it off our taxes. And I had the baby on my lap and I lasted a day. And then I was like, if I continue to be in this workshop, it is grossly unfair and an abuse of my friendship with the teacher. Because the other participants, it's going to be really like imposing something on them that they didn't sign up for. So it sent me into a tailspin. I would wander the streets of Glasgow with this baby on my back, and it was like cold and sprinkling. And I love museums and stuff, but she would start crying in the museum, or she'd need to nurse, or she'd fall. I was like, I got to figure out something that I can do creatively that is going to have an audience of strangers, and no matter how small. But I wasn't down with the idea of like, well, make a painting of your friends. They'll love to see that. I was like, I don't want to. I want to continue to have this connection to strangers. So that, and I'd always wanted to have a zine, but I had never found a subject that would sustain multiple issues. And then I realized like, oh, I live in the East Village. I have a baby. At the time, there weren't so many like families that were visible there. I mean, of course there were families, but it felt like more of an offlier and or outlier. And
so, but
the East Village and report on it with a baby on my back.
Even then, you chose to do not because the world was on the internet at that point, I think. And instead of a blog. Yeah. Well, so
email. There were. I mean, I found so Ariel Gore, who I mentioned earlier, also had a zine called Hip Mama, and that it came out, I don't know, maybe 6 times a year, 4 times a year, but there was did they call it a BBS, an electronic bulletin board?
Oh God.
And we would all log on, and I really came to appreciate the fact that I lived in the East Village, because there were women who were sort of, outside of the mainstream mold of motherhood, and they were living out in these rural communities or like suburbia, and they just felt like, I'm the only one who's like this. I'm the lonely little petunia in the onion patch. And I thought, I don't feel that way. I go out to Tompkins Square Playground and I'm like, woo, it's like hanging out in the college dorm. I like everyone I meet. I like all the children. And then like, it's the East Village. There's all this stuff to eat. There's all this visual interest.
But the idea, it's still to this day a hard copy. People subscribe to it. They get it in the mail.
And it still looks exactly the same way it did when Inky was little, because it had to be, I used to draw it to size. Now I draw it on an iPad, but, and now, I can put in photos and stuff a little more easily, but, it had to be small enough that it could fit in a purse or something, the equivalent of a diaper bag, which I never had a diaper bag, but I did carry diapers, and I also carried it.
Oh, I carry diapers too. You're a woman.
Yeah, you never know. It's you can share them with a friendly stranger if you need to. But I had pens, and she would fall asleep, and I would carefully shrug her out of the backpack and lay it down on the park bench or the subway bench or wherever, a cafe if I was lucky, and then I'd have about an hour to work on it. So it's always been that same size. It's always been black and white.
And by the way, if you want to subscribe to it, the cost of an issue, and this astonishes me. It astonished me that when you first put it out, it was $2.
Yeah.
Now, what is it? $3.50?
Yes. That's quite a huge adjustment for inflation. But yeah, it's $3. I think if people buy it online, they pay for the postage, which is, like, I don't know what even it was, like, is it 78 cents to mail a letter?
Well, but if it fits in it doesn't fit
like, it fits in a greeting card envelope, and it's 1 ounce. So yeah. And it feels like getting real mail. That's what I always tell people, like, how many bills, how much junk mail, how many, political announcements. And you hit a certain
and then you get something you want. You get something that
something that feels like it's like if a friend wrote me a letter, and it has pictures and it's funny. And
so, but when you started it, you were a new mama, and you wrote about that and being in New York and trying to cope with everything going on. Now it's 30, it's 28 years later, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you write? Your kids are growing in college, right?
They're out. My daughter works at the La Brea Tar Pits and lives in LA. My son lives in an apartment in our same building. And, is figuring out what he wants to do. He studied comedy at one of the 3 colleges where you can major in comedy. So yeah, they're living their own lives. And for me, I thought like, well, I do feel like I need something to sort of sustain it through. I don't like a grab bag kind of just like whatever. So I would choose a theme for every issue. Like one was animals, and one was New York City museums. What for Kurt Vonnegut's centennial? It was Kurt Vonnegut. I can always find something to say, and it's always very digressive, and it always digs into my childhood growing up in Indiana. But
Yeah, a lot does come back. Not to get too personal, but a lot. Did you have not a traumatic childhood, but it seems like there were traumas in childhood that you keep sort of now, or
yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I'm somebody who's my interactions with therapy have been very, very small and not particularly successful. So I think I'm always interested in looking at like how did I grow up, when did I grow up, where did I grow up, and that I didn't have sisters or brothers. I think for me, I want to explore my only childhood a lot more. I'm the only child of an only child of an only child. So that I always feel like my nose is a little bit pressed up to the glass when I see people who have sisters or brothers, or even like, oh, these big happy families. That's what I didn't have.
well, when you
So
watched your children growing up, did you sort of see what you quote unquote missed, or did they
maybe a
did they
little,
hate each
yeah.
other until last year?
No,
No, no, no.
no,
Yeah.
no. And our apartment was small, and they shared a bedroom until India went off to college. She shared a bedroom and bunk beds in a apartment that only had room for like a homemade desk that was about this wide, and that was what they had. So they had to get along, even if they didn't feel like it. And at a certain point, I was like, is this not like really? And they would accuse me of like, you don't know because you're Midwestern, or you don't know because, you're an only child. And sometimes they had a point, and sometimes I was like, I think you're pushing it a little bit. People are people. But, we looked for ways that we could do it. That like, if a teenager was in a bad mood, it's like, okay, you just need to tell us and we'll leave you alone, because like everybody has bad moods, but it's not fair to us to like let that permeate the whole apartment. Just say, I'm in a bad mood, I'm gonna be on this top bunk, or I'm gonna shut the door in this room for an hour. And that's how we figured it out. And I'm pleased that they do like each other, and they do. I mean, I'm always thrilled to hear that like one of them knows about the new girlfriend or the new boyfriend, or like, and I'm just finding this out. How many months has it been? But ultimately that does feel good that they're in cahoots with each other.
Now, a word that is quite important to this program, Dave's Gone By, that AYUN Halliday is on right now, is the word you probably don't know, but potatoes are a very big part of the ethos of this program. Don't ask. But we're asking you. I think potatoes have shown up frequently in your.
Yes, my recent oeuvre. Yeah. I had an idea, it was before the pandemic, to write what at the time was going to be an etiquette manual for people who were toiling in the low budget art sector, people who weren't rich, weren't famous, weren't putting on Waiting for Godot with Keanu Reeves on Broadway, but were doing it in a black box theater for 3 weeks on their own money. And extend that to musicians, extend that to writers, artists, clowns, anybody, any kind of performance and or creative practice, but somebody who would define themselves as an artist, not somebody who was saying like, oh, well, in my spare time, I like to do embroidery. They would say like, no, I'm an embroiderer. And also I work in a hospital as well. But, somebody who that was so important to them. And people will say like, oh, well, when you're doing a off Broadway show, like, can you see into the audience? And the answer is yes, of course. Not only can I see into the audience, I can see who's there and I can see who's not there. And it can be a real head trip to focus on who's not there, because I have many dear friends who never come see anything, or like, we'll see it and say, so where do you want to eat afterwards? And it's like, no, I need you to feed me. I'm showing you my baby. Is my baby cute? Could you just volunteer, even if you don't feel that way, that my baby's cute? So, and of course, obviously, I know I don't speak for all artists, but it was just like, how can you make your own stuff, but then not be a total jerk about other people's stuff? Like, what is the buy-in in this community? What are your responsibilities? And there was a guy who now is one of the Wayfaring strangers, David Carl. He's a wonderful actor, very funny guy, great improviser. And we met after a show that we had both seen as audience members at the People's Improv Theater in their old space that had a bar. So, I'm chatting to this guy that I just met who saw the same show I did. I was like, what do you do? Are you an actor? And he said, yes, I had a one-person show. I was like, oh, what's it called? Just keeping that conversation going. And he said, it's called Gary Busey's One Man Hamlet. And I was like, I heard about that and I wanted to see it. And I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I wish if I had met you earlier, I probably would have seen it. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. Let me know if it ever happens again. And he's like, yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this one-person show called Nurse, in which I played Juliet's nurse, trying to set the record straight that she thinks Romeo and Juliet was told incorrectly, and she wants to get her side of the story out there. And then so he was like, well, tell me when it is. And, took a postcard or whatever. And about a month later, I look out into the audience from the stage at Nurse, and there was David Carl in the front row. And I was like, that's the guy to be that person. And sometimes you need a little reminding. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll go see your show. That sounds great. But show up. It doesn't matter if you think it sounds good. Buy the book. It doesn't matter if you think it's great. If your friend wrote it, buy it. Buy it. You can always give it away. Or tell your library to buy it. Write a review on Goodreads. It's on, this is how the sausage gets made, or the vegan sausage gets made, or whatever. We have to
help you to be there. But I'm still wondering where the potato comes in.
Oh, yeah, that was a very long answer to a short question.
Something. Well, yeah.
It came in because I was like, we're small potatoes, we're not the big potatoes. So yeah, it was, and in my mind, the book would be called The Small Potato Manifesto, and then the publishers, people who interact with bookstores and give good advice on what sells and what doesn't sell is like, you have to let people know what's inside the book. The Small Potato Manifesto, people aren't going to know what that means. I'm like, I know what it means.
That's
not everybody. Yeah.
No, I think also, and this is going back a long, long time, but I think when your firstborn was born, there may have been, it was, and I could be completely wrong about that. There was some medical things, and you wrote about it. We call it a sweet potato or something. Well, which is not a potato.
Neonatal
potato.
Sweet potato. Yeah,
yes,
that's true. Yeah, I know how that one came about. It was that when she was about 8 months old, and she quickly recovered. It is true what people say. Don't get born or have any business in the hospital over July 4th weekend, because it's the worst possible time to be in the hospital. I think the next season of The Pit, it's going to take place then, and I am there for it. I'm very interested in that. All the new residents are starting, all their teacher doctors are on vacation. Everybody's new. So we'll never quite know what was wrong with her and why she started to fail so quickly after birth, but they got her patched up and she's great.
I remember that. I will never forget neonatal sweet potato.
Sweet potato.
It sounds so wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. So I was doing a puppet show about her birth, but I had a 6 or 8 month old baby, so I couldn't make puppets of babies with a baby in a 340 square foot apartment in the East Village. And I was like, I'll just go buy sweet potatoes. They're about the right size. And so we had all these bassinets filled with sweet potatoes. So that's where neonatal sweet potato came from.
So maybe another, and feel free to pivot if you don't want, but this is from Wikipedia. So Can you tell, did you actually date Stephen Colbert back in the day?
That people can dig for that on the internet. He's a lovely man. That's it's weird. It's like, if your college sweetheart became one of the most famous people in America, it's weird. He's a lovely person.
Did you get in touch when CBS canon to say, hey, just saying, hey, I'm sorry, and you can always come and join Theater of the Apes, or not?
No, I mean, it was weird. Like, there was one point when the neo-futurists were really like claiming hard that he had been a neo-futurist for a day, which technically he was, but I was like, this feels like bad to me that you guys are claiming this, because he came in and auditioned, or we just put him in without auditioning because he was my friend. Like he was able to not have the Greg Kotis treatment, and then he got cast in Second City and showed up at rehearsal and was like, listened to everybody's proposals and said, well, this has been so interesting, but I'm afraid I have some bad news for you guys. So, but we're in touch every now and then, and it blows my mind. He is not only super famous, he's like super famous and right, always in the middle of the zeitgeist. He's He's out there swinging the sword for good.
Yeah, how am I? I mean, it's I'm rooting for him too to come back and do something, which is
Something.
now. Speaking of coming back and doing something, you've got Inky, you've got Stray. What are you've got the book. Do you
Yeah.
have another project that you can talk about?
Yes, I can. I mean, they're both like they're up here right now, but I do need to stop promoting Panthers. I'll be promoting Panther City for the rest of my life, so I don't need to have a full fire hose promotion. I can just like put on the sprinkler and let it keep sprinkling. So I want to do a graphic novel of my
Oh,
one-person show, Nurse, and I think I want to self-publish it because this has been a fascinating learning curve, but it's fun to say like this is how I want it to be. And it might be more marketable if it isn't so me, but I'm over the, no, I'm not over the hill, but I'm on the descending part of a hill that leads to the grave. I'm not climbing up to the pinnacle. So I'd like to just get more work out there in a form that maybe can survive the zombie apocalypse. Maybe there will be somebody digging through an attic and say like, what's this? This looks interesting. And it fits in my survival backpack.
Oh, actually,
So
keep it simple. Just program AI to keep making inkies for the next 100 years. It can write it. It can do the pictures. Just do the coding. Boom, boom, boom. Go off and do more theater. Just
that breaks my brain. That breaks my brain. Also, partly because I wouldn't know how. I'm sure ChatGPT actually could do it better than I could do it in 5 seconds. And I'm always curious to know, can AI talk the way I talk in my zine or my books, which is so in some ways tortured, but it's like I've made my own sort of vocabulary. Can it do that? Like if I
Not
just put my
yet.
weird spelled name in there, it'll know. But so I'm going to do a graphic novel of Nurse, mark my words. And then I also want to do a podcast where I interview other only children. And I've been thinking about it forever, but it's technology. So that it really slows me down when I'm like, I'll have to learn how to do things. That slows me
Well, it's
down.
sort of like turn on the computer, have a microphone, talk. And thing is,
It's that easy?
the tech is,
Okay.
is not so scary as if you're shooting a multi-billion-dollar film. No, it's sort of like computer on, hit, sound, yeah, hello,
Yeah.
you're in, you're good.
Okay.
If
All
Mark
right.
Maron can figure it out, you can figure it out. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have been chatting with the delightful AYUN Halliday. The way to get all this stuff that she's talking about, because I can send you one thing for the book for Panther City. There's also Wayfaring Strangers once a month at the Pit. Just go to her website. It's the best way to find out about what she is doing and to subscribe to Inky. It's AYUN. I was saying it perfectly, and then you told me how to say it. Now I can't say it at all. AYUN, AYUN in the Welsh, Halliday, HALLIDAY.com. And there are all the buttons to click about the book, about the zines, about the stuff. So, my last question for you, and then thanking you so much for joining us and having such a fun chat with us, is where does religion, if at all, because I happen to be Jewish, I don't know if you know this, but were you raised, I assume Catholic-ish, but do you have any religion? Do you raise your kids anything or just egalitarian or something?
I would refer to myself as a secular humanist, but I haven't really like gone to any secular humanist meetings or anything. I was raised in the Episcopal Church. It never took, much to my father's great sadness. He was very, very a true believer and a practicing Episcopalian, and went to a really cool church that was very supportive to me through his death. The older I get, the more I say like, if your religion encourages you to be kind to others and strangers and to help and to lead with love, then I'm all for it. And I understand the important part that churches and temples and other faith-based organizations where people gather, that can provide a real solace in hard times, no matter what's made, whether it's personal or social, or you don't have enough money, you don't have enough food. I think that you need there's a terrible injustice that needs to be righted. All those things can be very helpful. And I'm envious a little of the believers who do have that. And who knows, maybe, when I'm really old, I might come creeping into some church or something and say,
Try a shul. Try a synagogue.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, Greg is Jewish, and India would get invited to seders at her high school friends' homes, and she would go and she'd be super into it. But
Oh, I can remember that Greg was Jewish. Oh,
yeah.
you married a nice Jewish boy. Not
I
only
married
is
a
he
nice
brilliant,
Jewish boy.
not only talented, he's Jewish. Good for you. Good for you, AYUN
I
Halliday.
got a good one.
Well, it is great for us to have AYUN Halliday here in the neighborhood. Go to AYUNHalliday.com for all her stuff written and when she's appearing on stage. We wish you much, much more generativity, creativity, and inkiness. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Shalom.